Hello, I'm Shelina Jan Mohammed, and this is The Shelina Show. I go beyond the headlines to try to make sense of the world. Helping me to do that are some of the sharpest minds around. I get their take on the stories that everyone's talking about, as well as the headlines you might have missed. With me today is Shahzad Younas, the founder and CEO of Muzz, a leading Muslim dating and marriage app. Welcome, Shaz.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, what makes somebody like you, who's doing a city job, throw that all in and set up an app to help people find love?
It's all in the pursuit of making a difference to the world. 9 years in banking, I realised I wasn't making the difference in the world that I really wanted.
And you've got 8 million members now?
8 million members, we're the biggest in the world now. And it literally started from me in my bedroom learning how to build an app and release the app and get it out there. And now biggest in the world, 8 million members. I think about 400,000, so check this out, 400,000 people around the world have actually found their partner and gotten married. Around the world, which is mind-blowing.
Well, congratulations. From your app, from Muzz, from the algorithms, from the way that people's interactions are decoded, are there any tips you can share on what is working for people who are looking for a partner?
You know, I actually think, especially for us, right, the reason why we exist, obviously we're centred around, we want to help you find the one, you know, your life partner, the person you're hopefully going to marry for the rest of your life. So that does change your perspective a little bit and how you use apps. So I think the intent is a lot stronger when you sign up. You know, when you sign up, you're like, you know what, I want to get married. And one of the questions we even ask you that's shown on your profile is, when are you looking to get married? You know, what's your kind of horizon? Because, you know, there were quite a few people who would join, would speak to someone and they're ready, but then the person they're speaking to are like, oh, I'm not looking to get married for another 2 years. So it helps align people. So intent is probably the most important of why you join an app like this and why you're talking to people. And then also I think you're hopefully a lot more considered about, you know, what it is that you're looking for, both about yourself in terms of what's important to me and then equally the attributes of someone that you're looking for. So I think you're hopefully a lot more mature in your search and you're a lot more considered around what's actually important.
This last week, we've had the absolutely devastating news of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. And at the moment, the numbers are looking like in excess of 20,000, but the estimates are suggesting we're going to be in far greater tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. I have to say I found it very difficult to watch the news and see the imagery coming out of it. And I know lots of people have been affected. You've launched a campaign to try and raise money for it. What's that about and what motivated you to do that?
Yes, same thing. I mean, I remember, I think it was on last Tuesday, I was watching the news and literally burst into tears because it was very difficult to watch some of the stories and just seeing the impact on the ground. For us, every year as a company, we commit to something quite big, every Ramadan, in fact. You know, so far we've kind of built a school, built a bakery. We're actually building mobile clinics in Palestine as well. So there's so many different projects. And we were actually preparing for Ramadan 2023, we're preparing our campaign right now. And then this happened and we thought, we have to do something now, we can't wait. So, you know, like you mentioned, we literally launched, it's blown my mind, we launched an emergency appeal on Friday to raise $100,000. We also were matching donations as a company. As of this morning, an hour ago, we hit $101,000, which is mind-blowing. We set ourselves a goal of $100,000 in 7 days and we've done it in about 3. For us, the key, you know, our charity partner, have a team on the ground, are distributing supplies on the ground, that's important. I just think for us, and it spurred us as a company to try and do more.
One of the big challenges that's been discussed is that the UK is making a contribution and sending support, both financial and resources. But there are discussions that this has been too slow, that some of the paperwork and the administration is getting in the way, and that we're just not acting fast enough, particularly because the foreign aid budgets have been cut, and that kind of connection between what is our foreign policy along with what is our aid budget. Are you seeing that in the work that you're doing?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you know, we speak with quite a few charities, other charities as well, who are either operating here or elsewhere, and it's something that we've heard a lot. And the problem is there's definitely a shift, call it in the UK government, in terms of their priority around things like UK aid, etc., and the international development budget. I think the problem is, unfortunately for this current government, and for a lot of people, it ranks lower in priority when you look at, call it the stress that we're in as a country. And this is the hard part, because I always say the hard part when you're giving to charity is when you're in difficulty yourself. It's easy to give when you have a lot. And the real test for anyone is what are you able to give when times are difficult. And it's not necessarily the amount, it's just the principle. Everything's kind of in proportion. It's the principle and the sincerity in it. And I think that's one problem where There are people who, despite, and we call it the cost of living care, and, no doubt there's a lot of people under a lot of difficulty in this country. And it's not to negate any of that, but equally, and, things like an earthquake and a natural disaster show you're literally at base level of the difficulties that people have in their lives. For us, I just think as a country, that has, whether we like it or not, and especially, you mentioned foreign policy, there's a lot of things that aren't so great about our foreign policy, and one doesn't cancel the other, but things like being able to support communities, especially in times of need, are so important, and we look at the refugee crisis and all this kind of thing of refugees coming into Europe and even into the UK. Everything is connected. The situation in Syria is connected to the situation we have around refugees both in Europe and coming to the UK. To focus on one and not the other, I think, is very short-sighted.
So as a business, you are using the resources and the clout that you have to raise money and to work with charities. Do you think there's more that businesses should do in order to play that role of social responsibility, not just in the UK, but also globally?
Yeah, no question. I mean, look, if you look at businesses, they have immense power and impact for sure. Especially, look, even for us as a company, just as a small example, and we're small in the scheme of things, but the donations made by our own team and by our own customers, in, like I said, just a matter of a few days of what we're able to raise, it's mind-blowing when you think about it. And there are companies way bigger, way more advanced than us who can hopefully raise a lot more. And I think ultimately what that does, whether you like it or not, it'll shame the government into more action, which can only be a good thing. No doubt the generosity of British people is immense. People really do want to help out, providing them more of a means to do it, backed by government, matching, etc. So there's a lot more we can do, and I think businesses can lead the way with some of this. It's so important. We can't just tick a box and say that's our corporate social responsibility done. For me, it comes down to sincerity.
Yeah, I think, being really honest, because it's so hard to look at those images and the scale of the devastation, it just seems so vast, so epic, almost heartbreakingly impossible, although we know loads of people are doing amazing work to try and rescue people and to give them facilities. What advice would you have? What do you think we can do?
Number one, I remember reading a quote, I think it was from someone from the DEC, and, they were saying people are well-intended, they get, second-hand clothes, etc., trying to get them together and get them shipped out and stuff, but ultimately, for the resources that they need, money is best. Money and prayers, they're two things which genuinely do help people. So people, often do feel helpless when there are times like this, myself included. And how can I help these people? And those two things, like I said, with sincerity, I think are super powerful. So, we shouldn't knock ourselves of what we're able to do. Trust in organisations who are on the ground, who have the facilities to help people. Support them. Support good charities who hopefully aren't wasteful and who can make a difference on the ground. And that, even for me, I always say to people, and when we were choosing our charity partner, they were the two things. How efficient are this charity in terms of, what's being spent on where it needs to versus what's being spent in admin, etc. And also, do they have the actual means to be on the ground helping people out?
I think that's wise advice, because I think we all have an urge to give or donate, but actually giving that support to people who know what they're doing and are trained for it is the most effective use of our resources.
To the right organisations, because especially online, when it's times like this, when there's a tragedy, you see so many online ads around donating to XYZ charity. Oh, do your homework, because unfortunately some charities are better than others. Focus on the ones who can make a bigger difference.
Now, thinking about organisations and how to make them more effective, we talked about your background working in the city, and then one day you woke up and the sun rose and there was the sound of angels singing, and you decided that your mission in life was to find love, and you are an online company. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of companies considering the move to hybrid working and working from home, which actually for a lot of people, including people like me who have children and responsibilities, has been an incredible shift. But now some of those companies are starting to say their workers need to come back into the office. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I'm definitely pro-hybrid. I think coming back to the office every single day, I think is naive. I do think, look, you have to be realistic. The world has changed. Fundamentally in terms of how people think about work, and just a knock-on effect of all that, the commute, etc., etc. And I do think there's a healthy balance. Now, we've gone, even as a company, we've gone on the whole journey of, from lockdown till now, as many companies have. And it's been interesting just seeing the effect of all of this on the team. I still remember when lockdown first happened, it was almost, it was to the day. We were in the office every day before that, and to the day they were all fully remote. And I remember there was the novelty effect. I was like, oh, this is new, this is whatever, I get to work from home. Great.
Did you get a lockdown hoodie?
Oh, all of that, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you have the shirt?
We had all the merch. We were going to do the full pajamas. That was the next step, full Muzz pajamas. But everyone had that, and then the fatigue set in. And I remember seeing this because we obviously do like a one-to-one process, for performance, just make sure everyone's happy and stuff. And we definitely noticed people were fatigued, people were tired, people didn't feel great because you're stuck at home working, not really talking to many people, and it's all online over Zoom or whatever. And Zoom it's exhausting. It's just intense, one meeting after another. And it's quite a different when you have an online meeting versus an in-person meeting. There is a difference, no question. And I could see, for me, just kind of standing back, it was great. We were very productive. We were getting things done. But what I could see was our creativity was being killed. So it's kind of great I was literally saying this to someone this morning. It's great, in my eyes, fully remote for a whole company, in my eyes, is relatively good for keeping the lights on. And maybe every company is slightly different, but I think just to carry on and exist, amazing, does the job. But I think longer term, for creativity, for be it a new direction or trying new products or experimentation, or as a business taking risks, which you should be as a business, for all of that, I think it's pretty terrible because it's very, very hard to genuinely ideate over different things remote. Because your intent, the way your brain works when you're sat in front of a virtual meeting, you can't allow your brain to wander, if that makes sense. You're focused on one little thing, and when that's done, you kind of move on.
There are a number of studies that show that younger employees, who we might call Gen Z, and even at the younger end of millennials, that people are now selecting work that gives them not just the pay packet, which obviously in a cost of a living crisis is really important, but also gives them some kind of sense of fulfillment, that they have a purpose, that they align with the values of the organisation. Do you see that in your...
For sure. I mean, look, we're very lucky. I'm lucky I get to do this as a living. It gives me a lot of purpose in my life, seeing the impact of what we do in bringing people together. Trust me, there's nothing that compares. And like I said, from a previous career in finance, I never felt that at all. Every morning I literally thought, what is the point of what I'm doing here? What's the real difference it makes? So no doubt for, let's say, the Gen Z types, there is an element of that which is important. But I think equally, and you mentioned, let's say they want the pay packet, which is fine, and that's super important. You might then say, and I've seen it, I just want it to be fully remote so I can just do what I want. I think is a little bit short-sighted, especially for young people, because how do you learn and how do you grow? Ultimately, we learn from others, right? We see examples from, for better or worse, from other people, from people who are more experienced, people who are more senior, etc. And some of that, you have to be in person. For us, we, as a business, I remember during lockdown, we shied away from hiring, young juniors because I felt we can't support them enough. I can't support a junior and their career remotely. I can't do justice to them, if you will. Whereas now, we've got a hybrid setup, we're back in the office twice a week. And for us, great, I can now actually start looking at grads and saying, right, how do we get them integrated and how do we watch them grow here at Muzz and at the company? So I think it's so important. My advice, especially for Gen Z and young people getting into industry, is don't be short-sighted. Like, there's so much value to be had in person. And it takes effort. And I was literally talking to someone this morning. It takes effort to go into the office. It takes effort to wake up, get ready, all of that, the commute in, all that kind of stuff. It takes effort. But the rewards of that, you'll see in X years' time. So always play the long game. As
an employer, do you come up with a blanket or inclusive policy which just says everybody has to work a minimum of this many days in the office? Or do you try and tweak per employee? So it's kind of tricky. We've tried all sorts of things. We've tried different kind of ways, methods, mandatory, non-mandatory, etc. And I think the first thing that we did, which I realised as we went on this journey, was if you are asking people to come back, you've got to have something nice for them to come back to. I think the bar has been raised. So, for example, at the start of the year, we just moved into a nice big office. Literally, I was there. We were doing it up. It's really, really nice. So that's really important because if you're asking people to come in, it's got to be a nice space. It's got to be a nice creative space, etc., etc. A place they would want to come to. Number one. I think number two for us, there's value in making sure that why are you asking them to come back? Because you want the interactions between them and others. So there's no point if you have 3 people coming on a Monday, 4 people coming on a Thursday. It just doesn't work because you're coming to an empty office and that's not what you want. So for us, we've got 2 days, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're within the M25, they're the days I expect you to come in. And it's between engineering and marketing, we get everyone together. So these conversations about how an organisation operates internally clearly are set within a wider context of business and growth. And we hear about growth all the time, growth, anti-growth, growth coalitions, growth processes. And this week we also heard announced that the UK has narrowly escaped from being a recession. But one of the sectors that's talked about for growth is startups and scale-ups, which is the next size, of which you and Muzz are one. What do you think is going on in the UK that can facilitate scale-ups like yours? I don't know, do you call yourself a startup or a scale-up?
It's kind of strange. We're 8 million members and growing, and I still think I guess we are in a scale-up stage or phase as a business, but we're forever a startup. You have this fear as a founder that you could, I always say to my team, we could die tomorrow. You don't do that
in the middle of this podcast.
Hopefully not. I'll check my stats when I'm back.
So what is the UK like as an environment for a business like yours?
So I think, look, and I have to say it's London, and that's the sad thing. It's not a UK thing. London is very kind of central to talent, unfortunately. And there is this concentration of talent, companies, etc. in London, which I wish kind of wasn't the case, but it is what it is. It's, I'm from Manchester and I moved down to London. Why? Because the jobs were here. The well-paid jobs were here, especially when I came into banking. And I decided to stay here after I quit banking because I realised this is where the talent is. So that's the first thing, sadly. So the whole levelling up thing, no doubt, it needs to happen. You can see there's so much potential up north, as a northerner. So number one. Number two, I don't want to say the B word, but it is. Brexit has made things difficult. I see it. I remember I used to interview so many Europeans, and now so many of them have no interest in coming here. Whereas previously they really wanted to come and work in London.
So what could change in the environment, whether that's the policy environment, the government environment, to be able to give you the boost that you need?
Oh, no doubt. So things like tech visas. So, I think that Tech Nation was I guess it was a startup of some degree, which just had I think as a result of all this, had their funding pulled. They were getting £12 million from the UK government. Now that's going to Barclays. So that effectively they're shutting down. What did they do? They helped, I think, bring nearly 400, mostly engineers, on a visa program to the UK. What does that help? It helps all the startups here in the UK. Hopefully startups trying to get to unicorn, just as we're one of them. So things like that, they're material and they're practical organisations that actually help bring talent to the UK. And ultimately, why, we have to be realistic. Why do you need to bring talent to the UK? Because there's a shortage of tech talent here in the UK. I'm always saying to my team, I'm scratching my head. Where are the, call it British university educated computer science graduates? Like, where are they? I'm trying to find them, and it's tricky. So there's definitely a shortage here. And in tech, you realise, and not that it's a numbers game. Especially with a lot of the tech layoffs now, it's not a numbers game. But good talent is hard to find, and in tech, the competition for that talent is high. So I think for the UK government, what do they need to do? They need to understand, what they often do, they shout about tech startups without actually understanding them and their challenges. And we have to equally be realistic. We're way behind other countries when it comes to tech talent, tech startups and the success here. We've got a handful of unicorns, and I can't remember when the last one was. It's been a while. So we've got a way to go as a country.
So if you could give one tip to a young entrepreneur who wants to set up a business, what would you say to them? I
would always say just do it. Don't, as difficult as things are, and there's always difficult, the whole nature of a startup, it's difficult. I think your ability to hopefully be successful is you just got to overcome all of that. And it's easier said than done. But startups anywhere are hard. I don't think anywhere, it's not necessarily easy. The grass isn't always greener. Other countries have pros and cons. But I just think the moment you start your company is the moment you start learning. And the whole process I've been doing it for 8 years, and every day, even now, it sounds cheesy, every day I'm learning, but it's true. You're learning about how to build a team, the things that are important, how do you deal with various challenges, because every startup has unique challenges. That whole process of learning, the sooner you can begin it, the better for you as a founder. So I just say, don't procrastinate, focus on getting a good idea and just start somewhere. And it's okay for it to be imperfect.
Just do it. That's great advice from Shahzad Younas. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much.